President, please be seated. The court is now back in session, and the chamber wishes to inform Counsel Copper about the written records of interviews or the testimonies of the two witnesses that you wish to refer to put question to the expert. You will be given the time to do it at the end of your questioning in closed session. And you may now continue with your line of questioning to the expert.
Procedural matter, Mr. President, if you allow me. The Kirsenpan team really would like to use the 3 sessions. That means that they would have to start now. In light of the many objections and the time passed in the previous session, I would like now to adjust my request and ask the chamber to be allowed to question Mr. Osman further in the session after the lunch break tomorrow. I have 2 subjects left. The subject that has to be done in closed session, and one other subject is, it's a complicated subject, it's the matter of the Cham population figures and the Cham casualties that Mr. Osman has earlier testified to. So there's one other point that I would like to make before then handing the floor to the Kirsenpan team. So my suggestion would be that they start posing questions to Mr. Osman, continue in the first 2 sessions tomorrow, and that I will resume my questioning after lunch. First part, the population matter, and then we move into closed session in relation to TCW 938 and 894.
How long? Sorry. You mentioned what you would want to cover, but not how much additional time, because that's in effect what it is, and a request for additional time. So how much additional time are we talking about?
The problem is that the issue of Cham population figures and demographics is a complicated issue. I expect to be busy at least 30-45 minutes with questioning Mr. Osman on this subject. The other issue, I would imagine only 20 to 25 minutes, the closed session part. So all in all, I would be done in one additional session, and it would be my request to continue questioning Mr. Osman after the lunch break, and only use that additional session after the lunch break.
International Co-Prosecutor, please hold on, and I'd like to hand the floor now to the defense team for Kiew Sampon.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Perhaps for purposes of organization, on the matter of a closed session, I think that if I complete my cross-examination of the witness with the 2 witnesses who have to examine in closed session, we can then continue the closed session with my colleague Kope, and then have just one closed session. That is the proposal I'll make. As such, the questions relating to the 2 witnesses will go into the second session, and so my colleague Kope would then be able to go into the closed session for the continuation of his examination.
Judge Laverne, you have the floor, and I actually do not understand your latest explanation as before the break you requested for an extension of time and that you need not have the closed session, and after we made our ruling and now you decide to have a closed session as well. And Judge Laverne, you have the floor.
Sur le point de huis clos, j'ai peut-être...
As regards the closed session, let me clarify what I understood. Counsel Gise is not requesting to be allowed to examine the expert in a closed session, but she is proposing that questions be put to the expert by Counsel Kope, and when she would have completed her examination, that is when she would have completed her examination. Counsel Antagise, to be complete, I had understood from your decision that all questions relating to the two witnesses would be asked in closed session. I understood that it applied to me as well. I have no problem in putting my questions to the witness in open session, but my understanding of your decision was that all questions regarding the two witnesses would be asked in closed session. That is why I made my remarks.
Je peux me permettre...
Judge Lavang, if you would allow me, Counsel Gise or the Kirsampan team, do you intend to ask questions regarding the number of Chams who died during the Democratic Cambodia regime? I feel that there's no coordination between the two defense teams because today, and I'm worried about that because today we are asking for time for the two teams, that is almost 2 days, that is 1 day and 3/4 of a day, whereas we had given 1 day and 1 session to the prosecution and the civil parties. Counsel Antagise, regarding coordination between the defense teams, I don't see how they should pose problems to the chamber because thus far we have been two different teams with different approaches, and sometimes there are cross-cutting matters and there are questions that can be asked by one counsel for both of us, but there have always been two defense teams with two different approaches to defend our clients. I want this to be very clear, and it's been very clear from the very outset, Judge Lavang. Counsel Gise, my sole concern is time. Each defense team is free to decide as they wish, but what matters to me is the time, Counsel Gise. As regards time, I've always explained to the chamber that the time allotted to us for each witness is very short, and we don't feel the other parties objected to our request for additional time. I thought that the time allotted was coherent and sufficient, but from the very beginning, and if we look at the background, I've always said that in the case of Mr. Osman, we'll need additional time, and I stand by my application that we have very important questions to put to him, and the chamber has indicated in the exchange of emails that would have the opportunity to make supplementary applications, and that is what we have made, and I maintain my application. Judge Lavang, I understand that, Counsel Gise. I asked whether you intend to put questions to the witness regarding the number of Cham killed during Democratic Cambodia. Respond by Gise. We'll have questions, not exactly the same questions as those put by Mr. Kope, but we'll definitely have questions to put on the number of Cham who died during Democratic Cambodia.
International Co-Prosecutor, you have the floor.
Very briefly, Your Honors, we understood the original order is that both the prosecution and civil parties had 5 sessions and the defense would have the same. I understand now a request is before the bench for multiple additional sessions by the defense, and we think if additional significant time is granted to the defense, additional time should be granted to the prosecution.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. I'd like to reiterate the points that as in terms of a standing practice, For time division, usually Mr. President is very strict on time allocation for the prosecution side and the defense side, except for exceptional cases. And I believe the time that the chamber granted is more than sufficient for them to put questions to this expert. President, we make the following decision. The chamber decides that for the two defense teams, you will have half a day tomorrow. That is the two sessions in the morning, and that will be concluded by lunch break. And if the co-prosecutors wish to question the expert, you will be given one session in the afternoon. And for the second session in the afternoon tomorrow, the co-defense teams will have their closed session, if this is what the party wish to do. Any other matter you wish to raise on this issue?
Non, Monsieur le Président.
No, Mr. President. I am conscious of the time left, and I would like to start my cross-examination of the witness immediately.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon. Mr. Usa Osman, we've been speaking a lot, so I'm going to try to get to the core of our discussion. My name is Quentin Taguisse. I am Mr. Kusapa's International Co-Counsel, and I have a few complementary questions to put to you. And with the leave of the President, I would like to provide a folder in which there are a certain number of documents that were placed in the interface, and which I'd like to base myself on when I question the expert. So I think it might be easier if he has these documents in hand. So the documents are the following: E3/511, E3/1822, E3/7525, and E3/2649. And with your leave, Mr. President, may I provide this folder to the expert?
Yes, you may.
I'm going to begin by revisiting certain points of methodology, and in particular, DCCAM's methodology. And you may confirm to me that when you wrote Okuba and the Cham Rebellion, we agree that you were already working for DCCAM.
Yes, that is correct.
In your book, Ukuba, document E3/1822, and for you it's at tab 6 in the folder. The ERNs I would like to concentrate on are the following, only in English: 000-78597 to 599. And my colleague Victor Koppe read out to you, I believe that this didn't refresh your memory really, but he read out to you this part that describes the research project, the DCCAM's research project. So do we agree that you read this excerpt? And first of all, are you the one who wrote this excerpt? And if you did not write this excerpt, did you read it when your book was published?
Yes, I did read it.
So must I understand that it is not you who wrote this segment on the DCCAM research project? And if it's not you, can you tell us who wrote it?
Answer. In the research projects of the DCCAM, I was not the one who wrote and compiled those segments.
Yes.
And can you tell me, therefore, who wrote this segment?
Answer. In relation to my research, Simsoraya, the unit chief, chose the text to show to the readers. This is to ensure and to inform the readers how the methodologies are implemented at the DC camp. So I do not know whether he got the text from others or where he got the text from.
Est-ce que
Is it true that in the drafting of your book Ukuba, as well as the Cham Rebellion, it is this methodology that you followed?
Answer. In my research, I have different methodologies which were compiled by the DC camp. And concerning question methodologies, those methodologies were checked by the experts at the DC camp. We were suggested to avoid any leading question to the interviewees.
Well, specifically speaking, regarding this topic, my colleague read the excerpt that's on page 149 of the book, in which it is clearly indicated that the level of the researchers and the experience of the researchers at DC camp did not make it possible to meet the scientific standards in terms of research. And in the following ERN, which ends in 98, which is at page 150, this is what is indicated, and I'll read it out in English.
DCCAM firmly believes in the learning by doing method when it comes to writing a research paper. All researchers are free to write as their fancy dictates, as long as they faithfully cite all of their sources and produce papers free from plagiarism. Fin de citation.
End of quote. So therefore, is it true, given what's written here, that you basically, in terms of your research methodology, you somehow learned on the job, as we could say?
Answer. That is correct. Let me clarify the point again. I was not engaged in the research methodology from any university. I did not pursue bachelor degree on this particular methodologies. It is my interest that I started to do the research. And number two, I want to document the history. And what I have done is assisted by professors, experts, and other experienced individuals in researching all the information.
Now, regarding the interviews that you conducted, you were alone, weren't you?
C'est vous qui avez mené les...
You are the one who conducted the interviews on your own. You didn't have any professors with you or any kind of assistance.
Answer. That is correct. However, there was an interview mentioned by Mr. Kope, the interview with Mad Lee. At the time, I interviewed Mad Lee together with Samsoya, the unit chief of a research team.
Another point that I'd like to discuss with you, generically speaking, regarding the interviews at DCCAM, not only those that you conducted yourself for the 2 books that you wrote on the CHAM, but generally speaking, we have seen here before the Chamber, for example, this is the case with the interview you have in the folder. I believe it's document E3/7525. Here we see many DCCAM interviews where several people are being interviewed at the same time. Or in any case, it's not the interview of one single person. There's someone who, it might be a family member, or there's always another person who is present during the interview and who sometimes interrupts during the interview and says something. And here I'm taking the example of the interview of In Young, who testified not so long ago. And here we note that it's only at the end of the interview that you ask for that person's name. The other person, beyond the person you were considering to interview at the start. So my question is, you say that you pay attention not to put questions that are leading in order to contaminate or to orient the person you're interviewing, but when you are interviewing several people, isn't there a risk that you end up in a situation because of the involvement of other people where there's a leading interview, and where you have an interview that's not of that single person, but an interview including information given by other people. So in terms of methodology, I'd like to know if in scientific terms this is missing out on the content of what the person really wants to transmit to you, if someone else is somehow involved in the interview as well.
Witness, thank you for putting that question. The interview you have just raised is the interview with Chan Kia at Old Chlung Village, Kampong Trach Commune, Romihai District, Svay Rieng Province. That interview had nothing to do with the research on JAM issue. Let me reiterate that at DCCAM, besides the research, I was working in a project that is promoting accountability. In short, it is PA. So that interview was used in that PA project.
I'm sorry for interrupting. Yes, maybe I wasn't clear with regard to my question. I used that example, but I will get back to specific interviews that are linked to the CHAM. But my question was a question of methodology in general terms with respect to DCCAM. So my question is, don't you think that there's an issue, scientifically speaking, to interview several people at the same time, which leads to an interview which is not the interview of one single person with that person's memories, but to an interview with elements coming from other people who are attending, who are present at the interview. So I'm not asking you to speak about the document, I'm asking you to comment on the method in general terms.
Counsel, even the English translator has trouble to translate you. Please slow down.
C'est ça, c'est la peur du temps qui...
Well, I'm afraid because my time is counted. Sorry. So, did you understand my question, Mr. Osman? My question was based on the methodology and on these multiple interviews.
Answer. I understand your question, and my response to your question is that I gave a priority. I set priority on individual whom I would interview, and they were allowed to select representatives among themselves who was the one who could recall the most of the story, and that individual would be the representative to speak on behalf of the group. However, there were some occasions that some others co-interviewees intervened and added the information. But I would like to inform you that the additional information from other co-interviewees who were not the representative of the group were not included in my book. In principle, I only included the accounts and story of the interviewee that I directly interviewed them. You quoted an interview, and that interview was used and included in the PA, or Promoting Accountability Project, and everything was included in that project, since we did not exclude any other points.
I'm sorry. I must interrupt you because I don't want to focus on that project. I really want to focus on your methodology. And I would like to move ahead because my time is counted. Another point in terms of here now, I'm revisiting and returning to the Cham Rebellion and to Okuba. More specifically speaking, when you gathered these accounts, did you compare them? Let's say between one person speaking about a similar fact and another person. So did you make comparisons between the testimonies? And if you noted differences, did you go back and question these people again? Did this ever happen when you were when you were writing your books?
Answer. I did interview one individual on different occasions, and I did not ask him or her why at one time he or she made a different account, and on another occasion he or she described a different story. The witness that I interviewed was allowed to tell the story and the experience that they went through. And some other witnesses that I interviewed were asked to give the first-hand information, what they have seen.
So must I understand from your answer that you would not make any comparisons between the different accounts from the witnesses that you interviewed? Can you please answer my question specifically? Yes or no? Did you compare the different accounts before you wrote your book, or did you simply just write down the accounts of the people you interviewed based on what they told you when you spoke to them individually?
Answer. In one section of my second book, The Rebellion of Cham People, I quoted a story of individuals I have interviewed. So the stories may have different from one another. And on other section of my book, I wrote based on the stories that I have received. So those stories were placed in different sections in my book.
I understood, of course, that the stories were placed in different parts of your book, but my question was different. My question was, did you make any comparisons between the accounts, and then did you possibly go question the people again when there were contradictions, or did you make any comparisons or not? So that's what I wanted to know. I just wanted to know that.
Answer. I did not go to ask the interviewings why they had different stories to describe, and their stories were different from others. The stories that I got from them were of different experience, their different experience. Some stories were consistent with one another, but some were not. For instance, the killing of Cham people in 1977 and 1978, evacuation of Cham people, forcing Cham people to eat pork, the abolition of Cham religion, and the stories are consistent with one another from my interview.
I apologize. I'm sorry. I think that I might not have been clear, so let me try to use a more specific example. So in your book Ukuba, it's at ERN 0000784. I don't believe that this excerpt is in your folder, so I'll try to read it out slowly. So you're speaking about facts that took place in Tria village, and that are based on the testimony of two people who testified before this chamber, Amat Sophia and Nosatas. And I'm going to read out an excerpt because there's also an issue of figures here. So I'm going to read this excerpt from Ukuba, and then I will put a question to you. It's the second paragraph on that page.
In late 78, the Khmer Rouge gathered all those accused of crimes, both Cham and Khmer, into a house in Tree Village, Krokshmar district, Kampong Cham province. All the prisoners were asked one question: Cham or Khmer? Those answering Cham were sent to one side and the Khmer to the other. All of the Khmer prisoners were released. All but 6 of the approximately 100 Cham prisoners disappeared. The 6, Nosata, Sleyan, Slesara, Maumeisom, Tamjuk, and Amat Sophia, survived because they lied and said they were Khmer. Fin de citation.
End of quote. So, in this paragraph, you are speaking about 5 Cham people who disappeared. But we heard Amat Sophia before the chamber, as well as Nosatas, who provided different figures in any case before the chamber. But in the interview, at least, that Nosatas granted you, for your book, in the French translation of this interview is at document E3/933, French ERN 00224115. And Khmer ERN 00204448 onto the following page 49, and in English it is 00204453, and on that page Nosatas says that she was placed in a group of about 40 young girls. Ahmed Sophia said it before, and said it before the chamber as well, spoke about 30 girls. So to make things clear for you, but maybe you know this already because I'm sure that you follow the proceedings, Nosatas before the chamber, when she testified, changed that figure and said that there were 300 girls. In any case, whether it be Ahmed Sophia or Nosatas, in the interviews you had with them, they both speak about 30 to 40 people. So my question is, how, in your book, Ukuba, did you come up with this figure of 100? What do you base yourself on to speak about 100 people?
Answer. The information that I included in my book referred to specific witnesses, and also the book included the addresses of those individuals. So I based all information on them, and as for they came before the chamber and told different story, it is their own responsibility. And I believe that the memory does not remain the same. The longer things happened, the weaker memory could have. I interviewed them about 10 years ago, so they may have remembered not well. And if you do not believe me, you can invite them to talk to you, and they may have told differently from what they have just told this court.
My question was different. I understood, of course, that the accounts may change, and we saw that with Nosatas, but my question was different. My question was, well, we have seen the interviews you conducted with Ahmad Sophia and Nosatas, and they only speak about 40 people. You, in your book Ukuba, you say that there were about 100 prisoners, or female prisoners, because they were women, who disappeared. So my question is, what do you base this information on? How did you come up with this figure of 100? In the interviews you had with Ahmed Sophia and Nosatas, when you interviewed them back then, they were only speaking about 30 to 40 people. So therefore, how did you come up with this figure of 100? Which is in your book Ukuba at the page I just mentioned.
Witness, could you provide to me with the audio recording of Ahmad Sophia's and Nusutas, particularly the part of the recording that I interviewed them at the time, and the portion that they said the number was 100?
Justement, en fait, moi,
Well, in fact, I have before me here the excerpts of your interviews, and these are documents that were annexed to the records and that indicate them as being the transcriptions of the interviews, and they do not say 100. It is you in your book, Ukuba, who says that there were about 100 people. This is why I'm putting that question to you. That's why I'm asking you, how did you come up with this figure of 100? Because I see it neither in Nosatas' interview nor in Ahmad Sofia's interview. So where does this figure of 100 come from? How did you determine it? And how is it that you include this figure of 100 in your book?
Witness, can I have the written document from you to verify with what I have written in my book?
Well, the document, you're speaking about the record of the interview of Ahmed Sofia Nosatas? But I only quoted elements that are in the case file, and document E3/9333 in particular, which is the annex entitled Interview of the Author with Nosatas. And now regarding Ahmed Sofia, let me give you the reference. Well, in any case, what's clear is that these figures do not come out of the blue. These are elements that are in the interviews you conducted, and this is why I'm asking you again, why are there different figures in the interviews from your book? Now, regarding Ahmad Sofia, let me find the reference. Well, in any case, I'm speaking about what was said before the chamber and what was said in what we saw in your book or in the interviews that were annexed to the WRIs with the OCIJ. So these figures I'm not inventing. These are figures come from your interviews with both of these witnesses.
Witness, I have told the court earlier that I need the documents that you quoted, particularly the figure, the written record of the interviews. You also used my page of my book to verify with the number in those documents. So please hand me over the relevant pages of the document so that I can compare with that figure in my book.
Je veux bien le faire.
I have it, but let me point out that I gave the ERNs in Khmer and in English in order that all the parties and the chamber may cross-check that we are not inventing anything. The problem we have now is that the version I have is in French. I have just given you the extract in Khmer, but let me point out that this is something we find in your book. May I request the greffier to give E3/9333, which is the annex of Nosatas, and on which about 40 persons are named. May I ask the greffier to give the document to the expert? But let me point out that for the continuation of the examination of the witness, I'll give all the documents and all the references. And we don't want to present an erroneous version of the documents we have. And if we do so, the prosecution and the civil parties will object. And I would like you to give us the figures that correspond to the information we have on record.
Answer. I have received the document, the page of documents that you gave to me. This document appears to be the text or the page from the book that I wrote at the beginning in Khmer. That was the draft. This page may have been the page from the draft, but that draft was not published. And the official information is the figure from the book that I have published. If you compare that information, the information in the draft Khmer version of my first manuscript, some information were not consistent with the book that was officially published in English, and that publication in English was done by the staff members at DC Chem.
Alors, excusez-moi,
In that case, I'll need some clarifications from you. Are you telling us that the documents we have, the records of interview we have in the annex of the statements given to the co-investigating judges by the witnesses in question, and they confirm the contents of the interviews you had with them? Are you saying that the figures are inaccurate? In the case of Nosatas, he mentioned about 40 persons. Are you telling us that that document, which was in the annex of the statement given to the co-investigating judges, and which is confirmed, and it is said that the contents are exact, and does that reflect the interview you had with the witness? Are you telling us that the figures are not accurate? The figures in that statement are not accurate?
Witness, my apology. I don't say that the figure was inaccurate. I was saying that I am recognized as a researcher based on the officially published book. The draft manuscript was not the official publication. To my observation, in relation to the figure 40 highlighted by you, it does not mean that the figure 40 refer to those who were sent away to be killed. That 40 refer to the group of single women. May I read that? I was sent and placed in the group of 40 single women.
Pardon me. As I stated, everyone has before them the document, and I have read out an excerpt of it. Everyone has also heard the statements of Anna Sophia and Nosatas on the subject. My question was different. You say that I rely on the official publication of my book. My question is as follows. Regarding the figure of 100 you've written in the excerpt I have just read out, where did you get it from? That is my question, because neither Anna Sophia or Nosatas gave that figure. So my question to you is how did you get that figure? How did you come by that figure of 100?
Witness, can you refer me to the figure 100 of charm? From my reading, I cannot find that figure of 100 yet.
No, since
It is normal. The ERN in English is 0078597.
et de mémoire, je crois que
And if I remember correctly, I think it's on page 6.
en tout cas,
In any case, I believe it is on page 6 of your book.
encore une fois,
Once more, I understand that you would like to see everything before you, but this is before all the parties, and the figure in the document whose ERN I've just read out in English is on record. If you don't know where you got the figure, say so. But I would like to know, in terms of the methodology you use to obtain the figures that you provide, what basis you relied on to give those figures.
Answer. I want to clarify that this figure was based on my interviews with Nusatas and Ahmad Sophia. The figure, the first figure in my draft manuscript was quoted from the interview on 5th December. And the two interviewees made a mention about the roughly 100 Ajam people. That is why I based that figure on the interviews that I got from them. President interrupts. It is now time for the adjournment. The chamber will resume its hearing tomorrow, Thursday, 24th, 2016. At 9 a.m. And tomorrow the chamber will continue hearing the expert witness Isa Usman. Please be informed and please be on time. I am grateful to you, Mr. Isa Usman. The hearing of your testimony as an expert has not come to an end yet. You are therefore invited to be here once again tomorrow at 9 a.m. My appreciation goes to Bades as well, the legal officer from OCIJ. You are also invited to sit close to the expert tomorrow as well. You may be accused now. Security personnel are instructed to bring the two accused back to ECCC's detention facility and have them returned into the courtroom tomorrow before 9 a.m. The court is now adjourned.